So you're saying that if you care about this, and maybe a lot of people don't, but hopefully more and more people do, then you need to do something and not rely on other people to do it for you.
That's right. We each individual have that responsibility as a citizen to sound the alarm, to stand up, to be responsible for our democracy, to hold our government accountable, and to make it work for the best interests of the people and not just for the best interest of a few of the people who may be intent on taking away the rights of the rest of the people.
My takeaway from this whole thing is that the liberties that we think are protected by the Constitution are in reality protected by our willingness to insist that those provisions be upheld. And the more I've learned about this, that's been the case throughout our history. The Constitution remains as powerful an instrument it is because people insist that everyone abide by the Constitution. And that's essentially why I took the stand that I did.
The only route we have left is, and it may not work, I'm not naive enough to tell you that it will, is to build a mass movement and be willing to carry out acts of civil disobedience that will put us in jail. I decided that I would only do what I had to do, and people could join me or not join me, which is why I was arrested in front of Goldman Sachs, why I've been arrested in front of the White House, why I'm going up in April to get arrested in an action in front of the Hancock Air Force Base, where they run the drones out of. That's it. I know what I have to do, and I write about what I do. Going to jail is more time than I care to donate to the U.S. government, but I don't think there's any alternative left. And people are very uncomfortable stepping out into the street and facing it. It's actually not as bad as you think it is, but they are. But it will come. I mean, and I think that right now, those of us who are challenging the formal systems of power have to keep that flame alive, that narrative alive, and we have to trust. I mean, I come out of seminary. I mean, that's what faith is. You're called to do the good, or at least the good insofar as you can determine it, and then you have to let it go. Faith is the belief that it goes somewhere. The Buddhists call it karma. Although all the empirical evidence around you may point otherwise. But that doesn't invalidate what you've done. Faith is the belief that the good draws to it the good. And I don't think you have to be religious necessarily, but I think that believing that is a way to sustain opposition without becoming too dispirited about the numbers or about the passivity and complacency within the wider population. I think those of us who defy the corporate state are speaking a truth that more people hear than perhaps the corporate state realizes. And as the corporate state pushes and pushes and pushes, because they know no limits, because they are as tone deaf to the sufferings of the American people as well as the wider global community as the courtiers who are running around Versailles, something's going to happen. It's a deeply corrupt system. And because it's so corrupt, it's fragile.
So we've got a lot of work to do to recover from what's happened. A lot of work. And it's not easy because people don't want to stand up. They don't want to take on a government. They don't want to take on law enforcement. They don't want to take on the national security apparatus. I mean, these are big institutions that we think nobody can challenge them, but we have to. We have to do it because if we don't, then they'll just run over us like a bulldozer.
We need to redefine citizenship so that it's no longer passive, that it's more active. We need to become something more than simply consumers of goods and recipients of government services. But I don't think there's any simple answer to how you become an active citizen. I think it's very much, you got to decide what you want to do, and I got to decide what I need to do. For some people, it's making films. For some people, it's writing articles or books. For some people, I think it's carrying signs and going to demonstrations. For some people, it's running for public office. For some people, it might be just trying to be a good citizen, a good neighbor, whatever, in some way, contribute to the common good. And quite frankly, with no expectation that your efforts or my efforts are going to make any decisive difference, they're not. But only if there is a collective effort, civic engagement broadly defined, it seems to me, is the only way one can find a glimmer of hope of turning these things around.
First thing is we got to have more conversations with each other, and we got to have those conversations without validating media middlemen, corporate media middlemen that often mislead. So education and constant conversation around these important issues. When we see distractions masquerading as news, we need to ask ourselves why. Why is the Today Show talking to Lindsay Lohan? Why is Kim Kardashian on everybody's news channel? Why is she news in the first place when you have a limited amount of time? What is the purpose of this? Is the general public only interested in that gossip, or are you trying to keep us distracted from other issues? So those are things that we got to be thinking more critically. So once we start framing and digesting and asking different sorts of questions around important issues, I think what next happens I think what will result will be strategies that allow us to move in particular directions that maybe lead to a reversal in some of these movements. Maybe it means to vote people in and out of office. That may be one. Maybe it means to put direct political or economic pressure on others. That may be two. Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe it means running for office ourselves. Maybe it means, getting people arrested. It may, there's no one size fits all answer for any of these things. Some issues are going to be locally based, and you can easily make a sea change there, if you get enough people to the polls. Other things may take a long time, so you have to plant seeds and methodically think things out. Like a chess game, put a piece here, put a piece there, then finally you get to checkmate. But it all starts with awareness, political, social, and economic awareness of these important issues.
Those who have power don't give it up willingly. And they will use everything at their disposal to stomp us out, which is why we have to be nonviolent, because we can't beat them at their own game. We have to build the numbers. We have to pull the people into the streets. And resorting to tactics of violence and intimidation is just what the security state wants. They want to demonize the movement. That is their goal. We've seen it in the way that they have attacked the movement through their media. And we're just, it's not a game we can win. We're not gonna fight them on their terms. We're not gonna win that way. But we can win morally, as sort of utopian as that sounds, because the more we speak this truth, the more it paralyzes the systems of power, civil servants, police, who understand that what we're saying is true. And when that moment of conflagration comes, as it does in a revolutionary movement, it creates paralysis within the systems of power because they don't know how to respond. This is what happened in East Germany when the ruling Communist Party realized they couldn't count even on their elite paratroopers to carry out their orders. Then you're finished. And it doesn't always succeed throughout history. I'm well aware of it, but it can succeed. And it is the only hope we have of succeeding. I'm just not going to lie down. I'm not going to make it easy for them. I'm going to be a constant thorn in their side, even if I lose. And it really boils down to having kids. We have betrayed the next generation, and I want my children to look back and say, at least my daddy stood up and tried.